Okay, so we've opened up our software and we're all ready for that to work for us. And now what we need to do is start learning about how the printer actually works. So what we have here, we have the actual printer, and we can point out some various pieces. Right here is a cooling fan. That cooling fan is going to allow us to cool off the plastic that comes out. Um, we have our control interface window, which allows us to move our printer. And what happens is this part moves back and forth, and it moves up and down while the plate moves back and forth. And we can move it in various different directions. So I can make it move in the X direction, and we saw that the plate kind of jiggled back and forth. I can make it move in the Y direction. So when I click on this Y, that makes the Y axis move back and forth. So the X axis controls the plate, the y-axis controls these two little bars that move back and forth, which controls this little red portion. And then we have the z-axis, arguably the most important. The z-axis is where the plastic actually comes out of. So I can raise that z-axis up, and we see that when that happens, this little guy raises itself up a little bit. And what we're going to be interested in is in this red portion right here. Now, to actually start printing stuff, I need to actually put some plastic in. So if I want some plastic, that's going to come from these little spools. It looks something like this. So these are just spools of Lego brick, and the plastic gets loaded into the printer right at this point. And what we're going to do, we need to actually heat the printer up. And what I found with this plastic is if we get to a temperature of about 195, we can type in 195, and hit enter to actually get the printer to start warming up. And we'll see that it happens sometimes quite slowly, but we'll see it start to happen. You should see the temperature start to rise. Occasionally you have to fiddle with it a little bit, hit enter a couple times, maybe click out of the temperature box, and the temperature will start to rise up. And we keep a glimpse on that temperature rising, and we can see the temperature rising in this bar window right over here. So as that's happening, what we can do is talk about the various other pieces of the printer that we see. So this part right here is called the build plate. That's where your stuff is going to actually print. And what you're going to do, you're going to lay down one layer of plastic in the general design that you've decided to print. And then the little nozzle right here, this red part, is going to rise up just a little bit and print another layer on top of that, and then another layer on top of that, and another layer on top of that. It's a process called additive manufacturing. It's been around for a long time, and it's only now becoming more popular with home users because of the advent of things like the simple metal printer that we have in front of us. This fan right here is very important. It's going to cool off the plastic that comes out of this red end. And this red end is the dangerous part, I guess you would say, if you were going to work with this with students. So this part gets very, very hot. In fact, it's going to get up to 196 degrees. So we don't want to touch that very much because we'll feel the heat on it. We do have an insulating red sock that actually helps to keep some of the heat contained, but it still nevertheless does get very warm. And what that does is it takes the plastic that we're going to load into this top end, and it comes down through here and it gets melted inside of this hot end so that it comes out of this nozzle as a tiny little piece of liquid. And then that liquid cools and dries and solidifies very quickly on this build plate. You will notice that this build plate has it looks like tape on it, and actually it is tape. It's just blue painter's tape. Specific brands work best. If you need some painter's tape for your printer, let me know, and we can get that for you. And what you need for this blue tape is to get the friction that it creates. It actually creates enough friction between the plastic and the tape so that the prints will actually stick to this build plate. You want things to stick very, very nicely to this so that your prints don't get toppled over or fall off. And what we do now that we are up to temperature 196 is we need to load our plastic in. So I take that spool, just taking little thread from that spool that we had over here. Take it, and I'm going to bend the tip just a little bit to allow me to load this in to my actual printer. We'll see if we can't change the angle here a little bit. And if we look, I have a little screw here with a spring. and that spring applies tension so that this gets squeezed. So I'm squeezing together this little gear right here, and when you have the printer in front of you and you look at this gear, you'll see that it has teeth. And then we have another guy over here, a little wheel that kind of helps to guide your plastic filament. So these teeth gear actually grip the filament, and there's a little wheel over here that helps to make the filament roll further down. And what I want to do is I want to grab the bottom of the printer right near the hot end, but not touch that hot piece. And I want to pull down on this little screw part so that I can release some tension so that I can get my plastic actually into there. And if I look, I can gradually push that plastic down into a tiny little hole until it actually starts to go in. And as I push more and more, it should start squeezing down into there. And I can keep pushing down. Hopefully, keep pushing, keep on pushing until I see something start to come out at the other end. If I look down there at the very, very bottom, you can see a little bit of plastic is starting to come out. So what I want to do, I want to clear out that plastic that's there. Okay. And I can come over to my printer window and I can click the extrude button. And when I click that, you can see down here at the bottom that the plastic starts to come out. And there's a little bit of clogging here. That's why the plastic isn't coming straight down to actually rest on the plate. So what you do with that is you just keep extruding out plastic until you actually get the stream that comes down and starts laying itself on the build plate. Okay, so now that we have that working, what we can do, we've got our temperature all set and we're leveled out at 196. So I can come up here and I can click print. Once I do that, it'll tell me printing. The temperature will fluctuate a little bit, maybe a couple degrees, and we can wait and watch what the printer's going to do. So it's automatically going to send itself to all of its home positions. Sometimes you get some plastic leaking, you need to clear that off. There's a little black plate that comes with every little printer that's pretty useful for doing that. And what it's doing is it's going to 3 different positions on the printer build plate. And each of these positions help it figure out how level this plate is. And it's going to adjust how it's printing. So as it goes, we can watch and we can see that it's laying down a tiny little layer of plastic. And it's laying down those layers in the shape that the actual object is that I want to print. So it's filling in our first layer for our miniature Yoda figurine. And as we let this continue to go, we should end up with a fully printed little miniature Yoda. And all it's doing is it's printing another layer on top of the previous layer. Now the plastic comes out again at 195 and 196 degrees, so it comes out very, very warm, but it cools off very quickly. So I can touch this right now, and it's cool. And you'll notice the fan will turn on. The fan turning on after the first couple layers so that it cools off the plastic fast enough, a little bit faster. And we can just let this go, and we'll come back in a little while, and we'll see if we have a successful print. So we come back just a few minutes later, and what we see is the printer has finished printing. So I have a tiny little figure right there. We can see it's been off for a little bit. I actually stepped out to teach while I was doing this, and I come back and the temperature is now no longer 196. It's gradually dropped back down, so this is cooling off. That all happens automatically. So you can leave things to print overnight if you have a particularly large thing to print. What I can do is I can grasp this thing that's on the print, and it's stuck very, very well. So that's the purpose of the blue tape, so that your plastic things that you're printing stick very nicely to the plate. What I can do is apply a little bit of pressure, and I can pry this off. And if I look, I've printed a tiny miniature little Yoda on my 3D printer. Okay, and we are all done. That is how you use the 3D printer.